So they actually had to add on 2 wings.
Right.
So beyond that door and this door. We're gonna go in this way.
A friend from college who's one of our current legislators. Yeah, she works, she's an attorney, but she also is a Nevada legislator from Southern Nevada.
Now, before we go in, let me talk about 2 more governors. This man, Isaac Newton Root, you can tell by the style of the portrait that it's a more recent portrait. That's because he was never actually an official governor. He was a pioneer, and at that time when he was here, he founded a town named Susanville, named it after his daughter, and that's where he lived. But all of this territory here was actually part of Utah territory. And Utah included the present state of Utah, the present state of Nevada, and also Colorado. It was huge. And all of the decisions were made in Salt Lake City, which is the capital of Utah. And it was a religious, Salt Lake City is the home of the Mormon church, and the Mormons were in charge. The people in Nevada didn't like all the decisions being made by someone so far away. So they wanted to form a Nevada territory, and they sort of elected him the territorial governor, and they had a convention and lobbied Congress. Well, back east at this time in the 1860s was the time of the US Civil War. And this was a war between the North and the South, and the main issue was slavery in the South. And so the people back east, including our president, Abraham Lincoln, wanted Nevada to become a state that was a non-slave state against slavery. So they created Nevada Territory, and Abraham Lincoln sent this man, James Nye, to get us ready to become a state. James Nye was the superintendent of police in New York City. He brought with him his own staff. His secretary was named Orrin Clemens. Orrin brought his kid brother, Sam Clemens, to Nevada. Sam Clemens was a young man, didn't know what he wanted to do, tried mining, found it was very hard work. And so he decided to become a writer, and he wrote for the Territorial Enterprise, a newspaper in Virginia City, and under the pen name of Mark Twain.
And as a literature teacher, interesting note about that. So people believe, it's been said, that the name Mark Twain came from what they would call along the Mississippi River when they were moving the boats up and down the Mississippi River. They would place the poles into the river, and they would yell out first Mark, and then Mark Twain was the second Mark, and that he would hear that as a small boy growing up. However, in Virginia City, to this day, you can go into some of our establishments, alcoholic establishments, and on some of the posts, they would also mark for the patrons to keep track of their bar tab. And they would call it a Mark Twain. And so there's some argument by Nevadans who say, wait just a moment, that name may have actually been taken from the words being heard in Virginia City, because many of the people that worked in the area were quite familiar with him calling out a Mark Twain. So now, again, I don't know if that's Virginia City and Northern Nevadans wanting that connection to a hero of literature. I love. But he wrote about other things in Nevada as well. If you're familiar with, there's a wonderful book called Roughing It by Mark Twain. And in that story, in this region, there's actually a brief earthquake where one man's land shifts and slides over onto his neighbor's. And they then get into a disagreement and ultimately litigation, because the one man says, well, that's still my land, even if it's moved over. And this man says, no, your land has moved over into my area, therefore making it mine. And so these two neighbors are now warring with each other verbally over who now actually owns the land that has shifted. A Mark Twain story, but it's relevant to this area. So he did talk a lot about this area. And again, as a teacher of literature, I use Twain frequently because his wit and his wonderful writing and descriptive writing. But there is argument that the name might have actually have a closer relationship to Virginia City than growing up on the Mississippi.
You'll find that Nevada has many very particular stories.
We're very Nevada proud. We might say yes.
Assembly.
What there be like? So this is the assembly, and the legislature met here and in the Senate for 100 years. They actually moved out in 1971, and the building was built in 1871 to a building that was built for the legislature at the south end of the plaza.
Where do they meet now?
They have a building that was built for them at the south end of the plaza.
Go up and stand so I can take a picture of you with the symbol for Lincoln.
So you see Abraham Lincoln on the medallion there.
Ooh.
You can have your picture taken if you like.
A picture of all of you with the
A lot of the kids like to sit in the carriage and have their picture taken. Our governor has been speaking from
in one moment, yeah, let them go ahead and get their